Hey there, Life After Sunday fam. This is Patrice. I just wanted to jump on as an on ramp to the episode we're going to dive into with my friend Taylor White. Taylor dives into some very deep and riveting conversations about the untimely death, the murder of her son, Makai. Taylor names names and she goes very detailed into the story behind her son's death. I just wanted to share that all of this is public record. So I just wanted to prepare you for this journey we're going to take about a story of a mother's love for her son and the grief that she still walks through today. We all know pain, even if it's not the loss of a child, so we can all relate. But if you have lost a child, you are not alone. And Taylor has lots to share regarding her son, Nakai. I am so honored to have this interview aired, and I'm so honored for you to take this journey with me. Long live Makai. Welcome to Life After Sundays. I'm your host, Patrice, and this is my guest today, Miss Taylor White. And today we're going to take a deep dive into this powerful woman's testimony, woman of God, her testimony of her son's tragic, untimely death. And this is what Life After Sundays is all about. It's life, not the pretty face that you see at church, uh, the suits, the dresses. It's about what life looks like after the amen, after the hallelujah, when service is over. And Taylor White embodies life after Sunday, the grace, the love necessary to walk out the scriptures. So if you're ready to take this deep dive, let's go. Let's go.
Hi.
She is very humble, let me tell you. But this is a woman of God. She is a boss lady in her own right. I met her in 2021. Mm-hmm. And actually, this is my first time meeting my sister. We have talked on the phone.
Yes.
And obviously, we're on social media together.
But that was during that COVID time when, you were meeting friends and developing relationships all via, social media or the internet.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Actually, was it 2021? It was definitely, we were still doing
was definitely
the mask and everything. But I haven't shared my complete testimony and my story, but my sister was a real estate consultant to a new realtor. I do have my real estate license, y'all, but Miss Taylor is a boss lady in the real estate world. I'm actually going to go ahead and have you bookmark that I'm going to bring you back, because we're going to do a whole Life After Sundays talking about just taking care of business and starting businesses and living out your dreams. That's absolutely Life After Sundays content.
Sounds good.
But today we're going to talk about your son, Makai, and just the phone call that every parent just absolutely fears. Getting that call that your son was murdered. And I especially wanted to talk to you about this during the holiday season. There's so many people out there that have experienced just trauma, tragedy, disappointments. And holiday time is a time where that just really just comes up and it resonates. Yes. And I know for me personally, I have my own holiday trauma. So just take us, Taylor, into what happened, as much as you're comfortable with.
So actually that day, it wasn't a phone call that I received. So it was a Saturday morning, September 9th, 2023. We woke up just like any other Saturday. And my son, he liked to write and perform music. So him and his friends, they would just go to the recording studio just as a pastime, just, to hang out. Yeah. So I remember, him telling me that he was going to the recording studio on Saturday, and I remember kind of asking him, like, hey, why don't you just stay home? Like, you know, um, you just started working, don't spend money on going to the recording studio. And, he's just like, well, Ma, I've been in the house all week, which he had probably been in the house like 3 weeks straight, hadn't gone out with friends, hadn't went out on the weekend. All he did was just work. And he was like, I've been in the house for a couple weeks. I just want to go to the studio for a little while. So I'm like, okay, son. So, that morning, got up, and I remember because I would always get on him about going to bed um, and leaving dishes in my sink. I don't care if it was a cup or a bowl, like clean the dishes. And when I woke up that morning, there were dishes in the sink. So I remember getting on him like, hey, you didn't wash these dishes last night. And, I like, don't leave out this house until you wash the dishes. And so I was in the bathroom getting myself together because I actually had a real estate meeting at my office that morning. And so I just remember him like yelling into the bathroom, like, I see you later, Ma, I love you. And I remember yelling back, uh, did you wash those dishes? And he was just like, all right, Ma, I love you. See you later, like just trying to overtalk me. So I know he hadn't washed the dishes. So I'm like, okay, son, I love you. I'll see you later. And that was the last time I saw my son alive. And so we kind of, we passed each other in the kitchen that morning when I told him about the dishes. And, um, he would always, like in the morning, he would always say, give me a hug, Ma. And so, we hugged that morning. But then again, I was like, wash these dishes. And so he left. His friend came and picked him up. And I left. I went to work. So while I was at the real estate office, we actually had a visitor. A young lady um, had brought someone with her. And so we were just all kind of sitting at the table, just having like open conversation. And I remember the young lady um, sharing with us that her son had passed away. Now I believe he passed away from an illness, but I remember her saying how she spent 10 years being so angry. And after 10 years, she finally, you know, gave it to God. And she said the minute, she, truly gave it to God. And I know, we know that the word says to cast our cares on Him, but a lot of times we still just hold on to that issue, hold on to that problem. We don't want to fully surrender it to Him. And so she said the minute that she did, like she immediately felt like the weight lifted off of her. And so she's like, she wasted 10 years carrying this weight and this burden when she should have just trusted God and gave it to Him 10 years ago. And so I just remember in that moment thinking, like, oh my God, what would I do if I lost my only son? And like, and something in my mind said, call Makai and tell him that you love him. Yeah. But I was just so engulfed in the conversation that I didn't. And so um, I got home around 4 o'clock, which I was supposed to be home way earlier than that, but everyone else had left, and I was like, I have a couple calls to make, so since the office is quiet, I'm by myself, I'm just gonna stay and catch up on some work. So I stayed probably an hour longer than I was supposed to. So I got home. When I got home, my street had crime scene tape, and so it was real. It wasn't like an immediate like heart started racing or anything like that because my son is at the studio with his friend. I have no idea what's going on here. Um, And so I began to just start like asking questions. And so I remember there was a news reporter out there, and then there was a police officer sitting in his car. So I went over to the car and I'm like, hey, like what's going on? And I'm like, did somebody get killed? And so he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. So now I mean, at the time I was we were the only black family on our block. Okay. So, I didn't live in an area where I, had to walk down the street protecting myself, or, you know, as a woman, I felt safe like walking my dog at, 9 o'clock at night. Like that was the area of town that I lived in. So like nothing ever happened. So to hear that somebody got killed, it totally shocked me. And so when the police officer said yes, and so I said, well, the first thing that came to my head is, oh, let me call my son, because I'm going to tell him, don't come home right now because something has happened. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, Lord, let me call my son. And so the cop immediately said, what's your son's name? How old's your son? Um, have when's the last time you talked to him? So like he just started asking me these random questions. So I'm like, wait, hold up a second. Now that's when I started to, you know, get a little nervous. And so I'm like, why are you asking me these questions? And so he's like, oh, no, just go ahead and call your son and, make sure everything's okay. And so I was like, okay. So at that point, I'm immediately calling my son, phone just ringing, ringing, ringing. And so, that's usually not like him, but I'm like, okay, well, they must, they're probably still in the studio recording. He probably doesn't have his phone in there with him. So I'm leaving messages. I'm like, Makai, call me back. I'm sending text messages. Makai, something has happened around the house. They're saying somebody was killed. Please call me back now. So no response. A couple minutes goes by, still no response. So then I call my husband, and, I tell him that, hey, I just got home. There's crime scene tape, and they're saying that someone was killed. Oh, and I did ask the cop when he said someone was killed. I said, um, was it a black male? Yeah. And so he was like, yes. I said, a young black male? And he said, I don't know that. All I know is that it was a black male. Mm-hmm. So even still, it still wasn't like really registering, because, my son is loved by everyone. He's at the studio with his friends. No one would come in this neighborhood to harm me, harm my family, or anything of that nature. So I'm just thinking maybe, somebody tried to rob someone, something went bad. I'm just thinking all kinds of things, still not thinking it has anything to do with me or my family. And so my husband was like, well, when's the last time you talked to him? And I said, well, we both left the house around 11 this morning. I said, but I've been calling his phone and he's not answering. I said, and that's not like him. So then my husband was like, well, who's he with? And so I'm like, well, Cam came and picked him up this morning. And so he's like, okay, well, try to see if you can track down his friends, or, see where he's at. And I was like, okay. So my husband starts calling them, same thing. So now I don't have Cameron's number, but I, I know someone that does. So I reach out to one of his friends' moms, and I'm like, hey, you know, um, I need to talk to your son because I need to get Cameron's number. And so she's like, what's going on? And so I said, well, Makai left with Cameron this morning, and I just got home. There's crime scene tape on my street, and they're telling me that a black male has been killed, and Makai's not answering his phone. So she's like, okay, okay, let me call him and get Cam's number. And so a couple minutes later, she calls me back. And so she said, well, I reached out to Cam's mom directly because you're scaring me. And so she said, is it she said she'll call you in a minute. And so she calls me, and so I'm like, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with Cam. I said, him and Makai were together. He picked Makai up from the house this morning. I said, I just got home. They're saying a black male has been killed on my street, and Makai's not answering his phone, so I need to get in touch with Cam. So she's like, well, me and my husband are on our way over to his apartment right now. She was like, I'll call you as soon as I get there. So I'm like, okay. So in the meantime, I'm calling some of Makai's other friends, and one of his best friends that live in Tallahassee, I'm telling him kind of like what's going on. I'm trying to get in touch with Makai. He's not answering. He left with Cam. So he just like starts, just spewing stuff out of his mouth. Like if something happened to Makai, Rocco did it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And who is Rocco? And so he's like, Rocco is Cam's brother, and da 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 da. And so I'm just like, okay, well, pump your brakes. We don't know what's going on yet. So maybe about 15. So my husband had arrived by this time. I guess he started calling other family members because like all my family started showing up. And I'm like, you know, at that point, I still, didn't want to think that it was Makai. But like with all these people like showing up, like it was just really like building up more fear and tension. And so about 15 minutes passed, and Cam's mom called me, and she said, hey, we made it to the apartment, and we're here with Cameron now. And so I said, well, can I speak to him? So she was like, sure. I have you on speakerphone. So I'm like, hey, Cam, have you talked or have you seen Makai? When's the last time you talked to Makai or seen Makai? I was like, you picked him up this morning, right? And so he's like, yes, ma'am, I picked him up. He was like, we left the studio, and my brother brought him home. And so I said, well, you picked him up, right? I said, why didn't you bring him home? And so he's like, well, my brothers brought him home. It's not like it was the first time my brother brought him home. And then he went to saying he had to go somewhere with his girlfriend, and, he didn't have the time. So that's why the brother brought him home. And so I said, well, they're telling me that a black male has been killed on my street. I said, and Makai is not answering his phone. I said, so where's your brother? And so he was like, I don't know. I think he's at home. So then the parents were like, yeah, he's at home. And so I was like, well, can you call him? Can we, let's get him on the phone. And so the mom calls him. And so she's like, KJ, I have Makai's mom on the phone, and she's looking for Makai. You know, you brought him home today, right? And so he's like, yeah. And so I said, well, where'd you drop him off? What time did you bring him home? Where'd you drop him off? I don't know. I don't remember. I said, so where'd you bring him? I don't know. A house. I said, so you're telling me that you dropped my son off at a house. You don't know what house it was. You don't know what time it was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. And so I said, so was my son physically okay when you dropped him off? Yeah, he got out the car and walked in the house. I said, okay. And so I said, all right. I said, okay, well, again, do you know what time that was? No, no, I don't remember. So the mom is like, KJ, stop saying that. Answer her. And so he's just, still just being so nasty and nonchalant, just saying, I don't remember. I don't remember. And so I'm like, okay. So, and I said, well, I said, where is the car? And no, let me backtrack a little bit. So he said he was saying he didn't remember. And so I said, okay. So I told the mom, I said, well, he's not being of any help right now. And so she's like, well, we're heading home now. I'll call you back when, as soon as, as soon as we get there and can talk to him in person. So by now, my family has gotten there. My brother and sister, they're pastors. They started canvassing the neighborhood. And my neighbor showed my brother um, his ring camera footage. And so he told my husband, um, but they didn't tell me. So by this time, they finally remove the crime scene tape. And again, I'm literally like standing there watching fire truck hose my son's blood out the street, still not oblivious to the oblivious to the fact that that's my son's blood. And so maybe like an hour or two had passed by, and so they finally let everyone return to their homes. So I go inside, and then my brother comes in the house, and so he's like, "Hey, did Makai start locking his hair? Did he have locks?" And I said, "Yeah, he started locking his hair a while ago." And he said, "Do you know what he had on today?" And I said, honestly, when he walked out the door, I was in the bathroom, so I didn't physically see him once he got dressed. And so he was like, "Well, let's call Cameron back and see if he can confirm with us what Makai had on today." So we call Cameron back, and so I'm like, "Hey, Cam, can you do me a favor? I said, what did Makai have on today?" And he said, Makai had on all black today. He had on a black shirt and black pants. And I said, what your brother have on today? He said he had on a, a hoodie that said CK on it, which I guess was Calvin Klein. He was like, he had on a CK hoodie. And I was like, okay. And so as we're talking, my brother, who, as I mentioned, is a pastor, has a lot of connections. So he calls the sheriff's office and speaks to the sheriff directly, and tells him of this video footage that he's seen, and basically that Cameron confirmed um, what both my son and his brother had on, which matches the two people seen in the video. And so a detective calls us and says, "Hey, do you think you guys can get in touch with Cameron and see if he'll come down to the station to answer a couple questions?" And so I'm like, okay. So I called the parents back, and so by now it's getting late. Some hours have gone by, and I'm like, hey, I just just spoke to a detective, and they want to know if you can bring Cameron into the station for some questioning. And so the dad's like, yeah, sure. And and this family loved my son. Like, they even called him son. The dad is a pastor. My son has gone to church with them. He has attended holiday dinners with them. Um, just loved my son. And so, um, by now, I called back and I asked the parents. I said, "Hey, can you just do me one last favor?" I said, because it's getting late. I said, and I still have not heard from my son. I said, and this is not like him. I said, can you ask your son, can he go and check his car to see if maybe Makai dropped his phone in the car? And so he got on the phone and I said, "Hey, can you check your car and see if maybe Makai dropped his phone in your car? The car got stolen." I said, "Huh?" The car got stolen. I said, "So when the car gets stolen, because you said you just dropped my son off." So I asked the parents, so I'm like, "So the car got stolen?" And so they're like, "Well, that's the story he told us." And I said, "So when did all this happen?" And so they were like, "Well, earlier today, he called us and said that he was at Walmart, and when he came out of Walmart parking lot, the car was gone." I said, "And so y'all never thought to mention this earlier?" And so they were like, "Well, honestly, at the time, we didn't think one had anything to do with the other, but now as time is progressing, everybody, we're all kind of piecing stuff together." And so I remember the dad telling me that because at the time the mom, she was seeming a little wish-washy to me, like, "Yeah, I think my baby might have did it, but that's my baby." The dad, on the other hand, he straight up told me, "If I find out that my son had anything to do with this, I will turn him in myself." And so by then, again, it's getting late, and I all I know is what I see on TV and on crime shows. Usually if somebody dies, I know they come and knock on your door and, you know, or call you or, tell you something. So I'm like, okay, well, I haven't had a knock on the door. I haven't had a call. So maybe that's good news. Like, I'm just waiting for Makai just to walk in the door with that big old cheesy smile, like, "Hey, mine, I heard you've been looking for me," or, you know, just something. And so the dad brings Cameron down to the station. They interview him. He, basically confirms everything that he had told us on the phone, as far as like what attire Makai had on, what his brother had on, that they, were the last time, he saw Makai is when Makai left the studio with his brother and all of that. So then the detective called me and said, "Hey, we just asked them to bring KJ, which is the brother. We just asked them to bring KJ down to the station as well for questioning." And so I'm like, okay. And so I remember I the mom called me. It was about 11 p.m. at this time, and so she was like, "Hey, I was just calling to let you know that my husband brought Cameron down to the station. They're still there, and they just called and asked us to bring KJ in. So, I'm getting dressed and we're going to get ready to bring him in as well." And so I remember saying to her, "Donette, um, you understand what this means, right?" And I said, "My son still isn't home. It's 11 p.m. Your son was the last person to see him alive." And I was like, "Do you truly understand what I'm telling you?" And honestly, I don't even remember what her response was, but she probably just said yes. And then that was the end of that conversation. So by now, again, it's getting late. So I myself called the police. Uh, and I'm like, "Hi, my name is Taylor White. I'm calling about the murder that happened earlier this evening on Melrose Avenue." I said, "I believe that it was my 19-year-old son, Makai." I said, "It's getting late. I haven't heard from him. I've been calling him. Now his phone is going straight to voicemail." I said, the people that he was with earlier have been accounted for." I said, "And all I'm getting is a bunch of, lies and, untruth stories." I said, "So, I believe that it's my son Makai." So um, they were like, well, you know, only thing we'll send an officer out to your house to get a statement. So about 30 minutes later, an officer came. I told him, that I believe that was my son. And he asked me to, uh, did he, have any like distinguishable tattoos or anything? And I told him, yes, he has. Um, both of his arms are fully tatted. I said he has my name on one arm, on one forearm, and then he has his grandmother's name, Jackie, on the other forearm. And I went into his room, and lo and behold, his driver's license, his wallet, and his driver's license were sitting on his nightstand. So now at this point, it's really starting to register in my head, okay, well, the reason why I hadn't gotten a call is because they don't know who he is. He has no identification on him. So I go and I get his driver's license. I give it to the officer. He takes a photo of it. And so he was like, well, the only thing, since, he hasn't been identified, the only thing that I can do is give you a missing persons report. So he gives me a missing persons report, and he leaves. So maybe about 11:30 p.m. is when I got a knock on the door. And I remember it was a sergeant, um, a lady, uh, and it was two detectives. And she said, so first of all, she started out by saying, she said, um, I know that uh, Makai um, was an amazing kid. She said, I know he didn't give you any trouble because for the last 8 hours, um, we have scoured every database there is locally, nationally, FBI, and there's nothing that we could find on your son. She said the only reason that I can regretfully stand here in your living room and tell you that it is your son Makai is based off of the tattoo description that you gave my officer earlier tonight. And she said, Cameron and his dad came in. Uh, she said, we have asked that they bring the brother in. And I said, yeah, the mom just called me and said that they're getting ready to bring him in. And she said, I can tell you that Cameron loves your son. She said him and his dad, they, were more than cooperative. Anything that they could do to help us, they were willing to do. And she said, I just want to tell you that we are not going to sleep until we make an arrest for Makai's murder. She said, I don't care if that takes 24 hours, 48. She said, me and my detectives here are going to work around the clock. She said, no one's going home tonight. And I think at that moment, every ounce of life I had in my body just evaporated.
um, it finally hit me just like a ton of bricks. And I just remember just like screaming at the top of my lungs. And my husband was just like telling everybody, please, leave, leave, leave. And
Can we take a break?
So, yeah, I remember my husband just ushering everyone out the house, just saying that that we needed some time alone. And I just remember me just like screaming. And I remember him just like holding me so tight. And at that moment, I could not breathe. Like I was literally crying, but gasping for air. And honestly, my husband was like, you have to breathe. You have to breathe because I'm just crying so hysterically. And and I just honestly, in that moment, I wanted God to take me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to breathe. You know, I I wanted to be with my son. And so the next morning, uh, that same uh, the same detective and lieutenant came to the house. And well, I remember at first when I first woke up that morning, the first thing I did was roll over and grabbed his card off of my nightstand, and I called him and I'm like, hey, um, do you have any updates for us? And he said, well, excuse me, he said they brought KJ in last night, and he's still here with us. And so I said, okay. And so several hours later, it's probably late afternoon, uh, they came to the house, and they said, she said, I told you last night, I promised you that we were not going to sleep until we made an arrest. She said, the only reason why you see me in different clothes is because I went home for an hour just to shower. She said, but these guys here, they have not been home to their families. And she said, I just wanted to come here and personally tell you that um, we have arrested KJ for killing Makai. She said he has been charged with second-degree murder. And so she was just asking if we had any questions. And I remember just asking her, like, why second degree? Of course, at the time I didn't know the difference between the two, and all I knew was that first degree was more severe. And she said, well, um, for first, she said, in order for first degree, we have to be able to prove intent. Um, so she said we knew that we could get a second degree charge to stick right now based off of the evidence that we have. And so, I said, okay. And so then I remember calling Cameron back. And so by then, Makai's other friends, were chiming in, and they said that um, KJ had killed somebody else several months prior. And um, they believe that Cameron told Makai about the murder. And KJ found out that Makai knew. So he killed him to try to keep him quiet. So you're telling me that my son lost his life for information that your brother, Balin, told him. And so I asked Cameron, I said, Cameron, why would your brother want to kill my son? And he just kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. I said, was he jealous of my son? I don't know. I don't know. And I said, well, the streets say you do know. The streets said that your brother killed somebody else a couple months ago and you told my son about it and that put a target on his back. No, no, no. Where'd that come from? That's not the truth. I said, okay. And then once he was already in jail for killing my son, he got charged with the other murder. So I had asked the detectives, I said, well, hey, the streets are saying that he killed somebody else previously. You know, do y'all know anything about that? Because they're saying that that may be a motive for him killing Makai. And so the detective on Makai's case, he said, yeah. He said, now, I'm not the detective over that case, so I can't really speak on it. He said, but I know that that detective 99% believes that he committed it. He just doesn't have that missing piece of evidence to charge him with it. So I'm like, so you knew that, or, the sheriff's office knew that this guy possibly committed another murder, but yet he's still out walking the street. Like, if y'all would have arrested him, my son could still be alive right now. And yeah, so right now, trial still has not started. Of course, September 9th was the 2-year anniversary of his killing. And every month I go to court for pretrial hearings and look the man in the face that killed my son. Now, these kids were 19. You were 26. Why you were even hanging with 19-year-olds behooves me. But then it came out that he was discharged from the military. He's a diagnosed schizophrenic. He has all of these medical issues going on and all these mental health issues going on. So in the beginning, they deemed him incompetent. So he wasn't even competent to stand trial. So I'm just like, oh my God, this cannot be happening. So they sent him to the Florida State Hospital, and they got him back regulated on his meds. And then after about 9 months of him being at the Florida State Hospital, they sent a doctor there to reevaluate him. And then that's when they deemed him competent once he was back on his medication. So from there, they transferred him from the hospital back to the jail. And now the state attorney who represents us, she monitors it regularly to make sure that he stays on his meds. So, she monitors his phone conversations, his video conversations, like anything that where she could see that maybe something is starting to become off, then she'll step in. But right now, she said, everything seems to be okay on that note. So right now, trial is set to start January 13th. It was supposed to be in August. Then they pushed it back to September. And then now from September, they pushed it back to January. So at this point, I just pray that, which they're pretty confident that, all the reporting and everything that they need will be in time, so that there will not be any more delays. Because I just want this
phase to be over with. Like I feel like I can't fully begin my healing process until we're done with trial, because I don't want to keep having that band-aid ripped off. Like I rather just deal with it, and then I feel like I can truly start working towards healing. But I just feel like trial has me just caught in a chokehold. And I know that there's a lot of things at trial that I'm not going to want to see. Like, I know I can't physically see a picture of my son laying in the street with his brains blown out. I can't see him bloody. I can't see, I know I'm probably going to have to excuse myself out of the courtroom when certain evidence is being shown, or at least put my head down and close my eyes, because those are just things that I don't want to live with, visions that I don't want to live with. I already, still see my son laying, cold on a metal table in the funeral home. And that's a vision that I can't get out my head. It was then that I had only realized that he was actually shot in the head 3 times, when the news had said that he was only shot. Well, they said at least 1 time, but they never mentioned 3. So I saw 3 holes in my son's head for the first time a whole week later, which was when the first time I saw his body. Like, it wasn't like they show on TV. I didn't have to go and peek in a window while they pulled back a sheet and identified him. It was none of that. Like, I had to wait until the coroner released his body to the funeral home before me and my husband was actually able to see him for the first time. When we did see him, they had already worked on him, so the holes in his head were closed up. I still seen like a slight hole where one of the bullets exited on the side of his ear, and there was still like some dried up blood and stuff on his ear. And then I remember the funeral home director asking me if I wanted a lock of his hair. And so he cut off a lock of his hair and gave it to me. And I just remember I just stood there, and he had really, really thick eyebrows. And I just kind of like rubbed his eyebrows. They were the only part of him that still felt real. His face felt hard like rubber, but his eyebrows still felt like real eyebrows. And I just kind of stayed there and just caressed his face and rubbed his eyebrows and massaged his hair. And then my husband was like, "Babe, let's go." And yeah, and I didn't see my son again until he was in the casket. And after that, we haven't heard from the family. Again, the dad is a pastor. You said you loved my son like a son, yet 2 years later, you haven't even reached out
to say, I'm sorry, how are you? We miss Makai every day. Um, none of that. I see on social media, um, I see his friend Cameron has got married, has had a baby. It's just like they're just moving on with business as usual. And I'll never get to experience that. I'll never get to see my son get married. I'll never even get to know what it feels like to be a grandparent. Like, I've been robbed of that opportunity. I'll never get to know what that love feels like. Like, that was the next phase of my life that I was really looking forward to. They tell you all the time, it's no love like a grandparent's love. Like, you think you love your kids, but wait until those grandkids come. So I was looking forward to that next phase, and now I'm just totally robbed of that. So I feel at times like lost. When Mother's Day comes around, I feel unworthy. The holidays are here. My son loved Christmas. Even at 19, he was like, "Ma, you putting up a tree?" I'm like, "Boy, you grown now. You don't need no tree around here." But now it's just like little things like that. Like, I would do anything in this world to have my son back. Even if that meant trading my life for his.
That's what mothers do. We would give up our lives for the lives of our children.
Yep.
Where are you at today, Taylor? In terms of just moving forward, I know you said that you can't really heal until after the trial is over, and you knowing that the murderer of your son is whatever the verdict will be with him.
Right. Now, they did actually upgrade the charges from second degree to first degree. Okay. They brought it before the grand jury a couple months ago, and the charges have been upgraded. So okay. I'm definitely happy about that. But I guess, they're saying because of his extensive mental history, yes, that, the death penalty may not be a possibility. So at this point where I am, I'm just really trying to rebuild my relationship with God, for one. Yes. Because I spent so long being just so angry with God. And I'm just like, every day my son walked out the door, I would pray over him, plead the blood of Jesus over him, command no weapon formed against him shall prosper. God, make his enemies to be at peace with him. And so that day, I questioned myself, and I'm like, and I questioned God, like, did I forget to pray this morning?
Yeah.
Like, God, I've been praying this prayer over my son for 19 years, and not a hair on his body was touched. Like, I was more afraid that he would be a victim of police brutality, or, just driving while black in America, than I would have ever thought someone would have taken his life. Because that's not the type of kid he was. He was loved by everyone, except this one person who claimed to love him, who claimed to be big bro.
I see you're not afraid to name names.
No, I'm not.
Why is that?
I mean, for what? For one, it's public knowledge. And for two, I mean, people need to be held accountable.
So we have a tale of a mother's heart being shattered, and then a family that you actually knew intimately, your son knew intimately, and that relationship being severed as well. So forgiveness, where are you at with forgiving?
I'm not there yet.
That's so real.
I'm not there yet. I'm definitely not there. And I know, that forgiveness is for you and not for the other person. But I'm still not there yet.
Not there yet. Mm-mm. That's so real. And love God, and still not there.
Yep.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
I've been holding my breath for this interview. I've been holding my breath. I have not heard the whole story. And as I started our interview, it's the greatest fear I think any parent has.
It is.
And you're walking through it with such grace. And
Thank you.
just
doesn't feel like it.
It's amazing.
Doesn't feel like it.
I didn't share her entire resume. She's a real estate extraordinaire. She's an entrepreneur. She's started a travel business. And her son had some business ideas too. Share a little bit about that.
So my son actually wanted to start his own clothing line. So, we talked about it extensively. He told me, what he wanted it to look like, what materials he wanted to use. I remember him distinctively saying, "Mine can't look cheap." He was like, I don't want just that printed on stuff, He was like, I want it sewed on. I'm like, you mean embroidered? Yeah, that's what I want. And so, he had a logo. He created a logo. He actually had gotten the name of the brand tattooed on his arm. And so I definitely plan to fulfill his dream of starting his clothing line. So the 2026, I will be working on it. I'm not going to release the name of it yet, but it was something that he was excited about, which makes me excited about it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Very exciting. How would you encourage someone who's walking through the unspeakable, a tragedy, and the holidays being right at us? How would you encourage them?
I would definitely tell them to, if they don't have a relationship with God, then they need to get one. And if they do, then you need to lean in heavy to that relationship. As I mentioned in the beginning, I was just so angry with God, just like, why, God? Why, why my son? Why me? Why, And I wasted so much time being angry. But even through my anger, God never took his hand off of my life. He still allowed me to be in my right frame of mind. He still allowed me to wake up every morning and not want to think about doing something harmful to myself. He still allowed me to think and to work and to, have all of my, mental capacities. I could have been in a place to where I just I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't work. And God still allowed me, even through my anger, even through probably cursing at his name, he still never took his hand off of me. And yeah, so that would definitely be my word to someone that is dealing. And I know it's a lot easier said than done,
Yeah.
but definitely lean into your relationship with God. Surround yourself with people that truly, truly love you and have your best interests at heart. Um, you know, my friends and my family, they still, it's been over 2 years, and some of them still call me every single week. Hey, just checking in. Hey, how you doing this week? Hey, have you eaten? Hey, you know. So I think it's definitely you need to have a great support system as well. Yeah.
Tell us about that post you made a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember it verbatim. I should have pulled it up. It was something like, when you lose a child, just everything hits different. Talk to us about that. Do you remember that?
I do. And actually I could probably pull it up, but I think I said, be careful with me.
Yes. Yes.
Because when you lose a child, you're different.
Yes.
Nothing about you is ever the same. You think different. You love different. You respond different. Um, you can spot the reals from the fakes. Um, like you just have a whole increased sense of everything. Just so be very careful with me. Tread lightly with me. Don't try to talk to me out the side of your neck, because you don't know what I'm dealing with. And if you get me on the wrong day but at the right time, you might see a side of Taylor that you never seen before. So just tread lightly, because losing a child is the greatest pain that any parent could ever face. And I've lost a parent, so I know how deeply that pain feels. But to lose a child is something totally different.
Totally different. Did something happen that provoked you to write that? Because when I saw that post, I said, "Woo, somebody done cross Miss Taylor." Where did it come from? Because it just was.
I think somebody was kind of poking my buttons a little bit, and I was trying to bite my tongue.
Okay.
So I just had to kind of let it be known, nice, nasty, like, watch who you playing with, be careful with me, because, you never know what people are dealing with. And, yeah.
That's real. So, we look real pretty. You see, this woman is absolutely gorgeous.
Well,
when I say
you.
her face is always beat, I mean,
Thank you.
Always. But we all have pain. We have pain. And your pain is just, do you feel like your pain is not going to be wasted? Because you're not even at the end of this.
Right.
And I get to watch her, because I know her on social media, and just all that she's doing, and this grace and this beauty and this success. But anyone that knows her story knows the pain that you're holding in your heart. Do you think your pain is going to have purpose?
Absolutely. I want to eventually get to a place where I can help, other parents that are experiencing the same level of pain, the same type of pain. Um, you know, and I hope that at times me sharing my story,
Yes.
you know, can actually help someone. And I feel like talking about it is like a form of therapy. I feel a release when I talk about it.
So good.
Which I remember I did my first podcast interview. It had been 100 days, and all the other, you know, parents that were up there, it had been, you know, 5 years, 10 years, you know. And so for them to look at me and like, what?
The strength.
Like, there's no way, you know, 90 days after my child was killed that I would have the strength to get, I would have had the strength to get up here and do this. And so I think, you know, I just kind of build off of that. I pull strength from that. Like, people that I don't even know, they, you know, message me all the time like, oh my God, Taylor, like, you know, you're so inspirational. Like, I pull strength from you. Like, I can't believe, you know, it was like, if you wouldn't have told me, or I wouldn't have heard your story, I would have no idea. And you know, they're like, you're, you know, I look at you and, you know, I know that anything is possible. And I mean, like, I never thought of myself as, you know, being an inspiration to somebody. But
here you are.
Here I am.
Here you are. Wow. I'm thinking of Psalms 30, verse 5, and it's, you know, this one, I'm sure anyone who's walking with the Lord, we're not immune to pain, but weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So we're still in the weeping. We're still in the weeping.
Absolutely. I'm still in the weeping.
Still in the weeping.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the joy.
I am.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I mean, I ask God all the time, please just take this pain away. I just want this pain to stop. I don't, you know, I'm tired of crying, you know. I'm tired of just a thought or a photo, or, you know, invoking so much pain and so much emotion. Like, I want to get to a point where I can see my son's photo and I can actually smile and laugh and be happy and not cry.
We're not there yet.
I'm not there yet.
We have a tradition. You know, I'm just getting started on my podcast journey, and Taylor's going to have a podcast too. But there's something that we do, and it's to let everyone that God has called to watch this podcast know that they're not alone.
Okay.
Again, that's the reason why I started this podcast, is because I have a story, and I know so many people have a story. And my hope is that in my story, and whoever I'm speaking to, their story, that whoever is watching will find their stories in our stories, and we would be able to minister hope and inspiration. So within that tradition, I want to be able to share, you're not alone. So I'll kick it off, and then I want you to chime in.
Okay.
So I want to say, whoever is watching, you're not alone if you are walking through one of the darkest times of your life and you feel like you just don't feel like you want to go on. I've been there. Actually, Christmas Day. I haven't shared my full testimony yet, but Christmas Day, call it my Twin Towers, completely collapsed. Life as I knew it was obliterated. Right. But you are not alone. If you have walked through the unthinkable and you feel like you can't go on,
particularly at Christmas time, right here, and Thanksgiving, even closer. But you can do it. Here you have two women of God who love Jesus and still walking through, still weeping, but looking forward to the joy.
Absolutely.
So I just want to let you know you're not alone, and there is life after pain. There's life after tragedy, and we're living testimonies. You want to share? You're not alone.
You are not alone. If you have lost a child, you are not alone. I try to tell my friends when they complain about something. I have to literally just look them straight in their face and say, who do you think you're talking to? This is me you're talking to. I should be the poster child of, fighting through adversity every single day. So you are not alone. On those days that you don't feel like getting out of bed, you are not alone. Those days where you don't want to cook dinner, you don't want to get dressed, you don't even want to brush your teeth. If you have other children, you don't even want to be a parent to those other children on that day. You are not alone. And don't let people make you feel bad about it. I think I struggled with that. Even some of the people closest to me, are you going to get out of bed today? Are you going to brush your teeth today? Are you going to comb your hair today? No, I'm not. And I have that right. So you are not alone. If you need a mental break, if you don't feel like peopling today, if you don't want to go to work today and you just need a mental health day, you are not alone. When you're in the car silently crying to yourself, you're not alone. When you're publicly crying, you're not alone. When you're sitting at your child's gravesite, you're not alone. I'm a part of another group. I'm a part of a group of mothers in Jacksonville that have lost children tragically, and we try to support each other as much as we can. Um, you know, if we're celebrating one of our babies' birthdays, we all try to support and attend the celebration. If it's the anniversary of their death and they just need someone to talk to or pray with or hug or just, meet them at the gravesite, we show up. And I would say get a support system because you are not alone. These were women that were total strangers to me, and now I love them like sisters. And it's a shame that our tragedies brought us together, but we're there for each other. And I shared with them that at times I go to my son's gravesite and I have full on conversations like he's there. Like I know he's not physically there, but just filling him in on what's been going on in my life. And I'm like, at times I feel like I'm crazy. You know, it even sounds crazy like saying it to other people or sharing that. And so, but they get me and they're like, no, you're not crazy. So just know you're not alone.
That's so good. I have to ask the mother, the mom, the day that Makai was murdered, that you met at the real estate office. Did you guys ever cross paths? Did you ever circle back around?
I never circled back around. Honestly, I can't even remember who she came with, because she wasn't an agent. She came with an agent.
She came with an agent.
So I can't even, I don't even remember. I couldn't even tell you who was in the office that day.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But just the sovereignty of the Lord. He went before you to just, even in the slightest way, just prepare your heart and just a.
And I don't, like you mentioning that, like I think I carried guilt too, because I felt like in that moment when, so based off of my son, was when everything had transpired, between the gunshot, my neighbor looking out of her window and seeing this boy pull my son out the car and throw his body in the middle of my street. Like all of that happened at around, I think it was around 2:20 p.m. And it's like when I think in my mind, I got home at 4:00. So around 2:20 p.m. is when we were in the office having that conversation. So I blamed myself. I felt guilty. I'm like, when I heard that woman say that, I should have picked up the phone and called my son. What if me ringing his phone would have stopped something? What if, it would have caused, because in my mind, I truly believe that my son was asleep in the car. Because he knew this boy. He felt comfortable with him. You've brought him home before. So, he has no reason to feel afraid or uptight. So I feel like they got in the car. My son probably laid his seat back and went to sleep because, you brought him home before. So you know where my house is at. He doesn't have to stay up to give you direction.
Right.
So because that's the only way that I can fathom in my mind that you were able to shoot my son in the head in a car 3 times while you're the driver and he's the passenger. My son could fight very good. We put him in mixed martial arts since he was in elementary school. So, there's no way like I could just picture this boy just pulling out a gun and there's no type of struggle, like bullets would have been flying all over the car. Like my son would have punched him in his face, or like he would have fought.
Gotcha.
So for you to just be able to shoot him 3 times in his head at close range, that truly makes me feel like he was asleep.
Right.
You were right there. You were 30 seconds from pulling up to my house in front of my neighbor's house when you shot him in the head in the car. So what what happened? What went off in your mind from that 14-minute ride from the studio to my house?
Right.
For you to wait until you're right in front of my door to shoot him in his head. So I truly believe he was sleeping. And so again, that just brings me back to just thinking like, maybe if he was asleep, if I would have called his phone, that would have maybe woke him up in that second, and the guy would have not pulled the gun because he had woken up, or maybe he would have caught him in the act of pulling the gun out from wherever it was, or whatever the case may be. So like I kind of blamed myself and just felt like tons of guilt for a while, like woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like I just played that day back in my head like 50 million times. My son's car was broke at the time, and so I could have given him the money a long time ago and gotten his car fixed, but I told him, like, you need to learn some responsibility. You spend your money on what you want to spend your money on, so you save up half of the money to get your car fixed and I'll put up the other half. So or I would let him drive my car. Well, that day I had to go to the office, so I needed my car. So, it was just like all these things in my head that was just going, woulda, shoulda, coulda, if he would have just, paid the money and gotten his car fixed, he would have been driving his own car and he wouldn't have been in the car with this boy. Or, if you would have not gone to the office that day and let him driven your car, and so I just played all these scenarios back in my head. But, like the police were telling me, if he had it out for your son, he already had it made up in his heart and his mind that he wanted to kill Makai. If it wouldn't have happened that day, he would have just waited until he got the next opportunity and tried it again. But again, I mean, still, that would have given me another day, another week, whatever the case may be. Yeah, so
we're just going to actually put a pause, because how do you end on a note that there's so much to say?
Right.
There's so much to unpack, so much just lessons for whoever the Lord would send. But I already said that you're going to come back.
Yes.
We're going to talk about business and continue on our healing journey. And I thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Love you.
I love you too.
I love you. Just wanted to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're such a powerful woman of God.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I just want to give you a hug, my sister. Bless you.
Yeah.
Bless you. What can I say? I held my breath. This was not a pretty episode. Lips quivering, and this is what life after Sundays is all about. It's not pretty.
Right.
Well, we love Jesus, and it's messy. It's blurry.
Yeah.
It's emotion. It's faith in motion. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. I'm hoping that your life is inspired, motivated, even challenged, and look forward to you taking the journey with me. And subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you for tuning in.